Hi, Mike from RunPhys.com, and today I want to talk to you about your hamstrings. Now, the hamstrings are a group of muscles in the back of your thigh, and most of the time when we think about our hamstrings, we hear people complain about how tight their hamstrings are. So with that, our hamstrings tend to be very unappreciated muscles. We only notice them when they're tight or when they're cranky. But how often do we stop and realize how helpful they can be when they're working correctly? Especially in the context of running, when your hamstrings are working well, they can be huge supporters of both your knee and your hip every time your foot hits the ground. So when your hamstrings are working well, they can help you out a lot. When they're misbehaving, well, they can certainly cause many different issues as well. So I want to cover a few concepts real quick and then show you a few exercises that you can do to help make sure your hamstrings are in top health as you continue running. Now, the first concept is, as I said before, most people complain about their hamstrings being tight. Now, quite often a tight muscle is actually a weak muscle, and as we ask our muscles to lengthen and come out of it during daily function, if our muscle is weak, well, that muscle's not gonna let itself be extended too far. So rather than have that muscle go this far, that muscle says, "Ooh, I don't want to do that, I'm only going to go this far." In which case, when that muscle gets used to doing that, it can act like it's a tight muscle, when in reality it's just trying to protect itself. So we need to make sure that we're not just purely stretching a muscle. We need to stretch it, but we also need to make sure that we are building up the strength into the new range. So we're going to cover that today. Now, a question you may be asking is, how do I tell if my hamstrings are tight or not? For some people it's obvious if you have pain, if you have noticeable tension when you're running or going about your day. But for many of us, we don't actually feel pain there, so how do we know if we have proper hamstring flexibility? The first test that comes to most people's mind is, can I touch my toes? Now, that's not a very accurate test because it's easy to cheat with that. If you have too much motion in your low back, then that can cause that test to be kind of what we call a false negative, as in you can cheat and make it look like your hamstrings have good flexibility when in reality they're not, and your body has compensated around that. So I'm going to show you another quick test that you can do to help clear up whether or not you have tight hamstrings or not. So what you do is get into a long sitting position, and instead of just reaching past your toes, which is part of a lot of fitness exams, and again, it's easily cheated on by moving too much in your low back, what you do is you sit and attempt to sit up straight by straightening up your low back. If you can do that easily, then there's a pretty good indicator that you've got good hamstring flexibility. If that's difficult for you to do, or if it feels like it's a lot of work, then that is a sign that your hamstrings are probably not as flexible or allowing the proper motion as they should be. So that right there is actually a good early exercise to just sit and simply straighten your back and forth. And that will get the ball rolling in the right direction. So the next few exercises I'm going to show you will help, again, improve flexibility, but also improve the strength and stability of your hamstrings. So the first one is a simple stretch. What you're going to do is you're going to put your foot up onto a step, onto a chair, or some other object, and you're going to keep your knee slightly bent. You're going to straighten out your back, and then you're going to gently lean forward through your torso, hinging at your hip until you feel a stretch in the back of your leg. Once you feel a stretch, then you're going to alternately reach with your right and your left hand towards your toes. You should feel a stretch in your hamstring the whole time you're doing it. You're going to do that about 30 times on each leg. The second exercise is a simple deadlift. And in this exercise, what you do is you balance on one leg, you keep your knee mostly straight, just a little bit of bend is actually okay with this one. And what you do is you lean forward with your upper body and stick your one leg straight out to the back. And as you bend forward, you want to reach your hands straight overhead too. And you're going to lean forward, staying under control, balanced on one leg, and lean backward, standing up. And go forward and backward, and you're going to do that at least 15 times. Now, the ideal position to get to is where your upper body and the leg in the air is perfectly perpendicular to the floor. If you can get to that without your knee bending too much, then that's a good thing to reach for. If that's too easy, then you might try holding a small weight overhead as you bend forward to put more work onto the hamstring. The last exercise you're going to do is a simple lunge as far as that's the starting part, but of course we can't just leave it simple that way. So you're going to get into a lunge position, but you're going to hold a small object that weighs perhaps 5 pounds, and you're going to lean forward with your upper body, holding that object towards the ground. And in that position, you're going to keep your feet in the same place, but you're going to lunge up and down in that position. You're going to do that 10 to 15 times with each leg. There's a good chance you're going to feel quite a burn in the upper hamstring with that one. And you want to make sure that your strength is at a level that you can tolerate that well. If you can do those exercises, those are really going to help make sure that not only you're gaining flexibility, but that you're also building up strength to make sure that you're using that flexibility properly. If you can do those well, those are going to go a long way to stabilizing your knee, helping your hip, and helping your overall posture and core stability. So work on those. That'll help your running. That'll help other areas of life. Let me know how they go. Have fun.